Hello, this is Mike Sharwood-Smith. Once again, if you've been following my previous two presentations in this series called Modelling the Mind, which is a very introductory series of presentations designed to give you a model of the mind according to the modular cognition framework. And I hope by the end of it you'll have a few insights into your own way of thinking. Who knows? Anyway, last time I looked at the Perceptual Portal, what I call the Perceptual Portal, which is the ring of, as it were, this ring of knowledge systems which correspond to your five senses, and the role of these knowledge systems is simply to make representations of anything that comes through, recognize patterns and frame them as little knowledge representations in their various stores. And in a moment I'll give you a reminder of these five systems and how they're arranged, but let's clear the decks first. Right, okay, the five senses. Remember, those of you who saw a previous presentation, that we have five senses, each receiving input from the outside world to give us a sense of where we are and what we have around us, and we use our various sense organs to build a picture of what is around us and to store it in representations in these various stores, so that next time we see an apple we'll recognize it, and this also enables us to imagine an apple even when there's an apple not in front of us, and indeed it allows apples to appear in our dreams. So this is a very important system. It's switched on all the time, probably even in our sleep, but particularly intensely during our waking hours, so that we can navigate our way through the space around us and not bump into anything and not run into tigers and not know what they are. And we'll get to what that means, knowing what a tiger is, in a minute. But as you see, they're all linked up by these interfaces, so that if you have an image of an apple in your visual store, and you think of an apple or you see an apple, if it's associated with anything else, a taste or a smell or a feel in your hands, let's say, then all these things will be triggered as well, so you'll get them co-activated. That's to say, you'll get a combined sense of appleness. Right. However, there's a snag, because this set of systems, which is shared with many of our fellow species, of course, although they have different types of representations in their minds. A cat's visual store will contain representations of its understanding, if you like, of the environment, but they will be very different because a cat's vision is different, so naturally it will have a different sense. In fact, it'll be somewhat more restricted than that of a human. Humans have a very evolved visual system, but we both have a visual system, that's the point, and we both have all these other systems. So what's the snag? Well, the snag is that none of these representations that we have in any of these mind boxes have any meaning. They are meaningless, and they have no value. That's to say, they're not positive, they're not negative, we can't assess them in any way, and they arouse no emotion. So clearly, although this is a vital set of knowledge systems for surviving in the environment, it needs more. It needs something deeper, something extra. More associations are required, and if more associations are required of a different type, then we have to talk about different knowledge systems. And one of them, today's topic, is the visual system. Okay, so to recap so far, with the systems that I've given you so far, the smell of an apple has no meaning and no value. The taste of an apple has no meaning and no value. The sight and image of an apple has no meaning or no value, and the same goes for the sound of an apple, and indeed the feel of an apple, the somatosensory sense of an apple. Remember that somatosensory sense is actually quite a complicated cluster of sub-senses, if you like, including the sense of touch, but also a sense of where your body is in space, a sense of your ownership of the body. So why are they not spread out into different senses? Well, the justification for that is really that, and this is because we want to keep our organizational system of the mind close to what we know about the brain, and contemporary views regard the somatosensory sense as a cluster of senses that can be treated as somehow highly connected, because they all can be found, or at least the brain system, the somatosensory brain system, is all clustered together in one particular space or part of the brain, just like the visual cortex and the auditory cortex and so on. So it does have a particular location in the brain. Okay, so moving on. We'll begin with a rather poetic sentence, which began a very recent article, which came out in Trends in Cognitive Science, and it's by Dehaan and Dijkerman, and I'll read it out to you. It's there in yellow. Somatosensory processing is central to life. Central to life. A touch on the shoulder, a soft stroke on the hand. Both can say more than words. Well, that's a nice romantic way of presenting somatosensory processing. It doesn't continue in the same vein because it's a scientific paper, but I rather like it, and it really gets to the hub of what I'm trying to say now. In order for this to say more than words, we need, at the very least, we need a value system, and I'll get to meaning next time. And the value system is called affect, the affective system, right? So this is the new system that we have to add, which will help us give value to any of these various representations, these perceptual representations I've talked about so far, and that is in accordance with the standard simple organization of a knowledge system. You have the processor, and you have the store, which the processor works with. Right? It's another specialized system. It's like nothing else in the mind, and its equivalent in the brain is like nothing else in the brain. And the affective store contains a variety of representations. The simplest two are the value ones, the ones which associate a negative value with something as opposed to a positive value. So negative and positive values are the simplest representations in the store, and it's also a system where the basic emotions are processed, and the basic emotions are understood to be some complex of a particular value, like negative or positive, together with other things. So all of these things account for value and emotion. So that's the first type of affective representation, the positive and the negative ones, and emotion is the second. Now, I say emotion, but those people who concern themselves with emotion generally recognize a two-way distinction between basic emotions on the one hand, and these basic emotions understood to be sort of, I suppose, primary. We have them from the very start. We don't have to learn them. They're there. They're in the affective store at birth, and they consist of things like disgust or anger, and there are only a few of them. Of course, there are arguments about how many exactly there are. The idea is that we also have more complicated emotions, apart from the basic emotions, such as pride and humility, and these ones need to have an association with meanings. And since we haven't got the meaning system so far, I will deal with that, as I said, next time. These complex emotions are not regarded as basic and sitting there nice and ready in the affective store, but their connections with the conceptual system allow them to be layered with other sort of shades of meaning, and hence we get the complex ones. Okay, but the main thing is that the affective store allows us to associate values and emotions with any other one, in other words. So I should have a series of connections which allow associations between this store and all the other ones. So for example, you can have a taste which is disgusting, and that sense of disgust that you get is because there's a negative value associated with a taste representation. Right? This is what we didn't have before, and now we do. Taste can be positive and negative. Right? And again, arguably, many of these associations are also already at birth. So to some extent, we are pre-programmed. This helps us survive in the early days, weeks and months of our existence. So some of these associations, as I say, are all set up in advance, but most of them we have to develop through experience of life. We encounter a new object. Can you eat it? Let's try. It tastes disgusting, so immediately you establish an association between that and this particular object that you just tasted. So it goes on. I'll now add all the connections. I'll take away the other ones, not because they've suddenly disappeared out of existence, but because they complicate the picture a bit. So just concentrating on these. Here we are, allowing associations between a particular representation in one of these mind boxes, one of these stores, with something in the value and emotion box, right? And I think that's really quite straightforward. Remember again that we are talking about the mind and not the brain. So in the brain it'll look much more complicated. There'll be lots of paths, locations, but you will be able, if you can see an image of the activity going on, a functional magnetic resonant image of an MRI, right, fMRI, a picture of what's going on when someone smells or listens, and the particular value that is placed on them. All of these can be tracked, and we can see that, for example, an auditory processing produces different results in the brain. So these, although these systems in the mind here, which I've set out very simply as circles and boxes, although these can be simplified a lot when we're talking about the mind. In the brain, it's a very different story. Okay, with that in mind, I'll say goodbye to you. This is the end of this particular presentation, and next time I'll be talking to you about meaning, and I very much hope that you will be watching. So, goodbye for now.